Creating custom Pokémon for you! Welcome back, everyone, to the show where we select lucky commenters to spin a series of random wheels that give us factors for a Pokémon that we then create just for you. It's gonna be a super fun episode today. We have 4 amazing custom Pokémon, but before we get started, I did just want to remind you of a couple things. First off, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And of course, if you want a custom Pokémon for yourself, all you have to do is leave a comment under this video, because I'll be randomly selecting people from this video's comments for the next episode. It's just the most fair that way. Everybody has an equal chance, but it also makes it way more important to subscribe with the notification bell turned on, because you could get a custom Pokemon and never even know it if you miss the episode, which would be an absolute tragedy. Don't let it happen to you. Subscribe now, and without further ado, let's get into the first Pokemon. And this one will be for Awkward Human 15. Glad you liked the Bractum line. It's one of my favorites too. So alright, Awkward, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a Convergent Evolution. Cool. So now we'll spin this wheel to see what generation of Pokemon we're making a Convergent for, and it's Gen 9, the most recent generation. So now we'll spin this wheel that has every single Generation 9 Pokemon on it, and we got Chi-ching. That is so random. A Convergent Legendary. I guess that's happened before with the Galarian birds, but that's going to be difficult. Now let's see what new typing we'll be giving to this Convergent Chi-ching. The first type is the Water type. That can make sense. It's it's already a fish, so that's good. And Water Dragon type. That's okay. We can do that. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do an additional form. This Pokemon is all over the place. If you're a big fan of side quests, then you're gonna love this. Your Pokemon is Chi-ching, the Coinfish Pokemon. These Pokemon are very valuable due to the golden coins that make up their body. Now, if you didn't know, I am actually working on making a fan-made Pokemon game, and in that game, this Pokemon will have a really cool role. Because similar to Gimmighoul in Scarlet and Violet, encounters with these Pokemon can be found spread out across the game in hidden locations. And if the player discovers and catches Chi-chings in all 10 locations, it will unlock a special item called the Ancient Treasure Chest, which is an item that when given to Chi-ching will cause it to transform into its treasure form. Known as an ancient guardian of sunken treasure, this Pokemon prevents items worth millions of Pokédollars from ever being recovered. And while this Pokemon does have incredibly high stats, it's held back by the fact that it has to be constantly holding the Ancient Treasure Chest item. And that's gonna do it for today's first Pokemon. This one was really difficult to come up with a concept for because it's a regional variant of such a strange Pokemon, but I think we came up with something that ended up being really cool, especially with how it implements into our fan-made game. That'll be especially cool to see. Also, I plan on making an update video for the fan-made game coming soon, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But anyways, this one was drawn by Devessa Illustrations on Instagram, so make sure to go check them out. And for the shiny, I made them orange as a callback to the original Chi-ching, and I just thought it looked really cool. But now let's get into the second Pokemon. And this one will be for Super Darkness. Glad you think the episodes are getting better every time. That's always my goal. So alright, Darkness, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. Nothing wrong with that. Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve. You can get 1, 2, 0, or the special split evolution, and you got 0, which makes you a basic Pokemon. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be the Dragon type. That's cool. Back-to-back dragons. That's pretty hype. And Dragon Grass type. That's interesting. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do a corrupted form. Whoa. A long time ago, a Pokemon was spotted in Lake Valor that had never been seen before. And the person who first spotted this creature took a photograph that would go on to be famous, as the Pokemon was never seen again, leading conspiracy theorists to make up crazy stories about what the creature potentially looked like, with many thinking it was a violent beast that dragged people down to the depths of the lake. Your Pokemon is Drift, the Driftwood Pokemon. Although the theories say this Pokemon is is a terrible beast, it's actually super friendly, and the reason it hasn't been seen in such a long time is simply because it's very shy, preferring to keep to itself as it calmly floats around and eats small underwater plants. Or at least that was until one tragic day when the Pokemon was discovered by a distant, unknown cosmic legendary, who as a cruel joke corrupted Drift, infusing it with the cosmic type and turning it into the monster it was wrongly believed to be. And as it now rampages across villages, this Pokemon has an even worse reputation than it did before, with no one knowing the full truth. And that's gonna do it for today's second Pokemon. If you couldn't tell, this one was based off the story of the Loch Ness Monster, where it was like a picture that everybody thought was the monster, but it was really just driftwood. I thought it'd be cool to make a wooden dragon Pokemon based off that, and because it ended up having a corrupted form, it got even cooler because it ended up being the monster people thought it was. This one was drawn by Le Petit Art on Instagram. Make sure to go check him out. And for the shiny, I gave it like this silver wood and a green body because I thought it looked really cool. But now let's get into the third Pokemon. And this one will be for Docky-Taw. Glad you like the long form videos. I appreciate all of you for watching this. So alright, Docky, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular.
There ain't nothing wrong with it.
Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get 2, which makes you a full 3-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is the flying type. That used to be the rarest type in our region, but we've been getting it a lot lately, so I don't know if that's true anymore. And flying steel type, that's cool. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and none this time. In the Pokemon world, being a pilot can be an extremely boring job. I mean, everyone just uses the move Fly to get around. They don't really need you. So to pass the time, most pilots keep this companion around. Your Pokemon is Outot, the flightless Pokemon. That's right, despite its flying typing, this Pokemon can't fly yet, but it really wants to, so it's always begging its trainers to fly it around in their plane. At level 15, it would evolve into Peckpeller. Now, having unlocked the ability to fly, this Pokemon is addicted to it and pretty much never lands, spending all of its time in the sky. At level 26, it would evolve into Captavian. This Pokemon is an absolute aerial destroyer, able to outpace and overpower any other creature in the sky. However, it's actually very weak on the ground, as since evolving, it's pretty much spent no time there. And that's gonna do it for today's third Pokemon. This one's pretty exciting because I think it might end up being the early route flying type for our game. You know how every Pokemon game has that early route regional bird? I think we now have ours. It was drawn by Luke Saray Draws Stuff on Instagram. It's the first one they've made for the series, so make sure to go check them out. And for the shiny, I just went with some cool blue colors to match like the sky. I thought it looked nice. But now let's get into the Patreon Pokemon. If you didn't know, I do have a Patreon to support the series as well as the artists that we commission for it. And if you become a member, link in bio, you can get on this wheel, which we're spinning at the end of every episode to see who the last Pokemon is dedicated to. I'm gonna go ahead and spin the wheel right now, and the Patreon for this episode is Randy Robbins. Congratulations, but thank you to all the Patreon's members for your support, Patreon members for your support. So alright, Randy, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a fossil Pokemon. Awesome! So now let's see how many times your fossil Pokemon can evolve. You can get 1, 0, or the split evolution, and you got 1, which makes you the maximum 2-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon will be, besides of course the rock type, and it's the ghost type. That's actually really cool because not only is there no fossil Pokemon with that typing, there's no Pokemon period with that typing, so that's really great. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and none this time. We all know about the meteor that took the lives of all the dinosaur Pokemon long ago, but what if I told you the same meteor also created life? The first stage of your Pokemon is Tekatera, the impact Pokemon. These Pokemon are actually fragments of the meteor that destroyed the dinosaur, because when it collided with Earth, many of the dinosaur souls were absorbed into the meteor rock, creating many of these Pokemon around the impact site. Upon reaching level 40, it would evolve into into Impactodon! These Pokemon crave destruction as the spikes on their back absorb the souls of Pokemon that pass away around it. And it uses these souls to power up their attacks, making for a truly villainous prehistoric Pokemon. And that's gonna do it for today's fourth Pokemon. This one wound up being a little dark, but I actually like it a lot. It was drawn by Le Petit Art on Instagram, so make sure to go check him out. And for the shiny, I made him red to look more like a meteor. But that's gonna do it for today's episode, y'all. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe before you go. And if you want to watch more episodes, there's a bunch in the playlist. I'll see y'all in the next episode, but until then, peace.